Hi, welcome back to Womenemies podcast. Today, this one is for the companies, for the decision makers and the leadership and management. Congratulations, one of your employees is pregnant. What is your company culture around pregnancy? Because representation matters. I'm going to start by saying this. There are the laws. There's federal laws, there's state laws that protect when someone needs to say that they're pregnant, when they're protected, if they need to say, how much notice they need to take before getting on disability leave. And then there's also each company has rules or guidelines about giving notice and planning and so forth. That is not what we're talking to today. Of course, we can't discriminate if someone's pregnant. Of course, they need to be protected. Of course, they don't need to say right when they find out that they're pregnant. All of that stuff, we will bring on a human resources specialist to talk to women individually about when to say and how when they're pregnant, how they feel comfortable. This episode is a big reason I do my listening audits. It's going in and finding out how welcoming a company is to parenthood, especially motherhood. Because let's face it, society still, a lot of the parenting falls on the mother. And especially during those 9-10 months, it's the mother that's growing the little human being in their belly. So, when I say how open and welcoming you are, I'm talking about how comfortable does someone feel to be pregnant? Or are they afraid to say that they're pregnant to their manager or to their place of business that's outside of the home? Are they afraid for their job? Are they afraid of their career path, of being stagnant in their promotion cycle, of being given the same opportunities? Let me give you a positive example of how amazing it is and how much it benefits a company to have representation and to be welcoming with pregnancies. I got pregnant when I was 34. I had almost a year under my belt in a new position for a fantastic international dispute resolution company, overseeing the business development of certain areas. And my husband and I really wanted a child. It was something that we hoped for, we prayed for, and we found out we were pregnant. I was super, super excited. I found out, I remember I was a week late and I didn't want to take a test until I felt psychologically ready because it was something that we really wanted. And then, I'm superstitious. We were watching the Seahawks and I said, okay, if they win today, then I'll take the test. And they did. And so, end of September of 2017, I ended up taking the test. It was positive. Super excited. Super excited. Come to find out, though, I had called my doctor's office and you couldn't even get an appointment until you're 8 weeks pregnant because that's when they want to do all the testing. So it was very backwards from what I thought in Greece where you go immediately. Anyways, I was super excited. I think on the third day that I was at work following the news, I called my boss and I told her. And I didn't feel like I had to by law. I knew I didn't. I was an attorney. I knew I didn't have to. I didn't feel pressure. And I did it because I wanted to. And I wanted to because I knew that it was such a normal process of life within that international company, because I had seen vice presidents, all the C-suite members being parents, but a lot of mothers. I had covered for maternity leave on a really phenomenal, influential leader in the company. I had seen tons of mothers, and many mothers were in high management roles throughout the country and internationally. So we knew, I had seen how it plans out when people are on leave and had coverage plans. I I had seen all that. Not just the support through throwing baby showers and congratulating, but when women came back from maternity leave, also being up for promotion based on their work. So that's why I wasn't afraid, because there was so much representation of mothers continuing and thriving in their careers that I knew I wasn't afraid for my job, for my promotion in the future or anything. And that's why I was excited. I looked up to my manager. She was a mother too. And I wanted to share with her. I was going to be going to doctor's appointments. And I knew I didn't have to. I could have just said I have doctor's appointments and blocked that time and gone. But it was an information that I just felt like I wanted to. I was excited. I felt like I was part of a family. And so I did. And I was greeted with pure excitement. Not like, okay, well, we have to plan for this. Like pure excitement, but also sensitivity. Saying, I was reminded too by my manager. She was phenomenal. Like, you didn't have to tell me, this is up to you when you want to tell the rest of the company. And she goes, when do you feel comfortable? And, I said, because I know the first 12 weeks are very crucial. Fortunately, part of the course is also miscarriages. People in the first 3 months, there's genetic testing. There's all these things that could happen. So for me, my comfortability was to start to tell people after the 3 month, after the 12-week mark. That was for me. There was no guidelines or anything like that. I wanted to share that news when I felt ready. I wanted my manager to know in case I had to go to extra doctor's appointments, and because I felt comfortable and because I knew she would support me, and she did. So not having to have that mental and psychological and social anxiety of thinking of when, how, and how should I tell my direct manager, and thinking about being strategic. It was such an ease because I was a new mom. I was already scared about all the genetic tests I would have to take as a geriatric mother at 34, that the fear of telling my direct manager or having my job and livelihood affected somehow would have been too much for me. And when I did at the 12-week mark tell people, I told other VPs who I worked with and my team, everyone was welcoming. Everyone was truly excited, not the fake, so great. They were truly excited. I felt people had my back. We were a team. And so I didn't have that stress about worrying about my job. I knew I could do my job and be a mother because I saw it done. So companies, this is where I first want you to start looking. Definitely do a listening audit. Have people talk to mothers in the company about, or people who are planning to be mothers. Are they afraid to talk about whether they're pregnant or not? Or when they were pregnant, were they afraid? How was their experience saying it for the first time? Is there a fear to become a mother? Do you think that your career trajectory or you will be treated differently? All of this helps when you're telling a third party who is not part of the company, who can then relay this information and make sure it's anonymous to people in the company to make sure that policies change, because it can be uncomfortable telling HR. HR could have the best of intentions, but because they're part of the company, if you were to give constructive feedback, sometimes people are afraid of it not being anonymous. They don't want that following them. So to get that true information, sometimes getting a third party, like myself, really does help, because they go in, they get the information, they're kind of a buffer between HR and the employees, and they give the information and strategic advice, and then HR can take it and run with it. And a lot of the time, the companies that want to do this are really ones that want to retain and want to support mothers, which are women, in the workforce. It's so important to ask these questions because sometimes you don't even realize, like, you could have the best intentions as in a company saying, of course, look, we follow all the laws. We give this much, time off in addition to the federal laws. We protect the jobs more than the federal laws. But that doesn't mean someone is afraid that
they're going to be treated differently, that management's going to be like, okay, well, they're off the track for a couple of years. That doesn't, or that they're afraid to tell their boss because their boss might look at like, oh, this is an inconvenience. Like, oh, what's going to be our coverage plan? So that's why it's so important to have a culture and to ask, are we supportive? Not just by law, but creating a culture that's supportive. So the first question I would ask is, how many mothers are in positions of leadership and, of change? How many mothers were employees and when they came back, they weren't promoted for many years? Now, of course, there could be other reasons, but statistically, have people within the company seen mothers, even new mothers or pregnant women, be promoted while pregnant, while being a new mother? Have we seen that? When you see that, you know that it's possible. It's not just something, oh, we would never discriminate against you. Of course, you can say that, it's the law. But when you put it into practice, when there's women who are going through different stages of life in motherhood and they're being promoted and they're not being stagnant in their career and they're succeeding and they're supported, that's the biggest win you could have, because then you're not losing the next generation of mothers. They're not starting to think, oh, maybe I need to start my own consulting company. Maybe I need to look for another job before I get pregnant, or after I get pregnant, maybe I should leave after, my maternity leave's up. Maybe I shouldn't come back because I don't see any women progressing in this company once they become mothers. I've been part of companies like that international company, which I've seen tons of women promoted and who are mothers, and during being pregnant and after, and being new mothers, mothers with toddlers, elementary, middle, high school, college students. I've seen the whole gamut. And I've also been part of law firms and companies where none of the women that became mothers, they suddenly got off the partner track. Or they were told they were on the partner track, and then after they became mother, they weren't on the partner track. I've seen that with companies I work with. That's feedback I've been given from mothers. I've been part of companies where their best intent was to never lose mothers, but they didn't even realize that mothers weren't being promoted. That it was scary to tell them that they're pregnant. I've been in conversations with leaders where they said, oh, okay, well, they're pregnant now. There goes that asset. Their whole life now is dedicated to the child. And that's not true either. Because unless it's a single mother, there is a partner there. And through decades and centuries, we've seen men who are fathers promoted. Their wife could be like about to be into labor and they're working, they're getting promoted. They're not one question has gotten into, oh, when they get back from paternity leave, if they even take paternity leave, their job won't be interrupted by being a parent. And society needs to change that, because both parents' life is interrupted because they end up, they assume another additional job, a parent and working outside of the home. So we talked about representation. That's one thing about being a welcoming company through practice of welcoming and supporting pregnant women and mothers. Another part of this is the culture and the language that is used amongst employees. And this requires training, sensitivity training, language training, through all levels of the company. Because let me tell you this, in all companies, another feedback I get is there are, women who are married or not married, but for some reason still society assumes that once a woman is married, she's more likely to get pregnant. Or once she's between the ages, of the late 20s to the mid to late 40s, she's in her childbearing years. Because now with IVF, we can get pregnant a lot later in life, which is fantastic. So once, a woman stops drinking at social events for work, or maybe is not eating certain foods, or is not feeling well. A lot of times, and that happens with me too, you'll assume, oh, maybe they could be pregnant. I mean, they just got married, maybe they're trying, and so there is this awareness. And so sometimes, without, again, the intention being bad, people could be like, oh, how's it going? I've noticed some changes there. Obviously, never talk about someone's body, but if, someone seems more tired or feels nauseous, if they were, of a different age or relationship status, someone might not automatically first assume that. But, you know, it can be very terrifying for somebody who's already holding in their pregnancy until they feel safe, medically to reveal the information, and also when they feel emotionally ready to tell everybody. So if people are asking them, and oh, I notice, you're not drinking anymore, or you're, seeming to eat more vegetables and protein and not any sliced deli meat, it can kind of put them, on guard, like, oh, do they know my secret? We need to teach people in the companies, don't even ask somebody if they're pregnant. Wait for them to tell you. We know that by law, but sometimes people out of good intentions will, talk about that. And that can create a very anxiety producing environment for the person who's already pregnant or trying to get pregnant, or is worried about, how am I going to tell my boss? And people are already asking me. Another thing is when people say to mothers, are you planning to come back to work after you give birth? Okay, are we asking that to the fathers? No. Why are we assuming that the mothers are going to want to stay home and have a full-time job as CEO of the household? Which is fine if they do, but they haven't even gone through the process of giving birth. And they don't know what life is going to bring. But why we shouldn't even be asking that to any parent, but it's passing a different assumption, like, okay, now you have a different priority. Maybe you're going to give up on this job for now to focus on your other job. That can create anxiety, like, oh, maybe I need to get back quicker. Maybe people are going to think I'm not taking my job seriously. And again, the intention could be the best, and a lot of time it's generational, because in the generations prior to us, it was something that happened a lot. And people, it was based on choice, based on economic factors. People chose to be a full-time CEO of the household and raise their child. But that, again, is up to each family. And we're not asking both sides of the family. We're just asking the mother. So that's something you also want to teach, not just management, but all employees from all through different statuses of the company, to be sensitive, not to ask those questions, because you're assuming that they don't want to come back to work, or they won't be able to now that they're a mother. And that can be very scary when someone is so passionate about their career. Again, I didn't ever get asked that question from people within my company. I got asked that question from outside people. But because so many people had done it, it was just something that was, okay, great. This is a great life, celebration for you. You're about to have, a different job at home, and we support you, and we can't wait for you to come back when you're ready to come back. And the other thing is making the person feel acknowledged before they go to leave on all the great things that they're doing for the company, and that you can't wait to see them when they get back, but not to pressure themselves to get back. That while they're gone, you don't want them thinking about work. That we got this. You've done a great job. You're on leave. Enjoy your baby. Do not think about work. Don't say that because only it's legally required. Yes, when someone's on leave, they should not be talking about work. But do that too from the emotional standpoint. Like, there is this woman who has given so much of her time, her care, her ambition, and she is now making a career transition, a temporary one, for as many months as that she is allowed, to welcome in a new member to her family and a new role to her life as a mother, as a CEO of the household. To be able to take away that mental load and worry that her job is going to be okay and it's going to be waiting for her when she gets back, and people are going to be excited to welcome her back and support her when she gets back. I can't imagine not having that. I had that. Did my manager check in with me when I was on maternity leave? Yes. Did she ask me about work once? No. You know what she did? She goes, "Did you brush your teeth today?" I said, "Yes." "Good job. You're doing a great job. How's the baby?" Because she was also a friend outside of the job. My coworkers were friends outside. They never asked me about work. They wanted to celebrate me in my new role as a mother. And that made me feel so loved and so valuable. And it's so important to a mother who's already feeling burnt out at home and doing something that they've never done and feel all kinds of like, I'm failing at this. He's not breastfeeding, or I have to use the bottle feed, or he's not sleeping. I'm not sleeping. My house is a mess. What happens if I'm doing this all wrong? Hormones up and down, pumping, there's so much. And it's all a new reality. Whether it's your first child, second, every child is different. So to have that, knowing that something is unchanged and is waiting for me, but there's no pressure, you are so lucky if you were in the position like I was. And companies, you can do so much to do that. It's not just meeting with HR to know the benefits. That's so important, by the way, and we should educate both fathers and mothers. But it's also training management to work with the pregnant mother on their transition plan, on their coverage plan. The mother can make up their coverage plan, make their outline. I made an outline, everything that I do and what has to be done to give it to the person who was covering. And I said thank you to the person that was covering for me, because that is an extra job while I'm out, and it was covered through a team. But also my team also said thank you to me for making the outline and the communication, and it was acknowledged, the work. And I felt when I was leaving that I was an integral part of that team. So another question I ask to mothers who have gone through this process in companies is, did you feel integral? Did you feel appreciated? Did you feel like your work was acknowledged before you went on leave? Another question is, obviously I'm going to ask for employment laws. Did anyone contact you for work while you were on leave? But I'll also, did anyone support your journey to motherhood? Not just by having a baby shower. Listen, baby showers in the office are great because it does show people, and by baby showers for both mothers and fathers, it shows companies that they celebrate parents. It's part of being part of this company that you will be celebrated. And it's very important. But also, were people sending you congratulatory text or a note, or if you saw them, because everyone has different rules about contact and stuff like that. But did you feel like people were excited for you? And then when you came back, how was the transition back? Because this goes again to a culture of, is this a welcoming place for a pregnant person and a mother? So now you're no longer pregnant, you're a mother. When you were welcome back, were you, come into work and was it go until 5 p.m. like nothing changed? Okay, that's not bad, but it's not acknowledging that someone is just returning from months off of, a job, and they're not returning from vacation. They're returning from a completely new role that has catapulted their entire life into chaos. That is also full of love. This is also for a lot of parents, the first time that they're leaving their child. I even get emotional thinking about it. They're leaving their child with somebody else. It could be that the father has paternity leave and they're tag teaming, but for a lot of people, it's daycare, nanny share, a grandparent, a family member, but the mother is not with the child. And in the early months, don't get me started, I think America should have way longer maternity leave and paternity leave. They should follow Denmark. But when a mother's separated, for me, it was 4.5 months old. Yeah. And I knew where he was going. He was in daycare, but it was like two babies and two toddlers. And it was somebody that my coworkers had referred because my coworkers and colleagues had used her, and she was phenomenal and truly was phenomenal. But the first day I left him, he was more than happy. It was a great environment, safe, wonderful. I was bawling my eyes out. And then I got to work. I cried in the bathroom. And you know what? I texted my boss. I said, I'm here. I just need to go to the bathroom. And she goes, don't even worry about clocking in on time. Take your time. When I was in the bathroom, I ran into a judge I worked with, and she gave me a hug. And she goes, I was there. I've been in your shoes. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, I know it's hormones. It's that physical separation, but also, this person lived inside of you for 9 months. So you're on a cellular level. It's a separation that's very hard. So are you acknowledging as a company that the first day back, like, don't overload the person? They're already dealing with hormones and separation and have never been that far away from their child. So maybe starting them off with a half day. My first day was not even a full day. It was almost a full day, but it was with breaks, obviously pumping, but also with just, breaks for me to call the daycare. She would text me photos, and just checking in and kind of easing me back, and also appreciating all the work I did before for the outline, and easing me back, welcoming me back with flowers, saying that they're excited, and feeling like I was stable in my job. So ask yourself, when someone's coming back on their first day, are you greeting them with flowers? Are you making it known that they can come in a little late or leave a little earlier or take more breaks that day? Are you recognizing that their brain has been used to being interrupted every 2 minutes, 3 minutes by the baby sometimes, or feeding, that their brain has not been on this type of work for a couple months? And so what, our brains need, our muscle, staring at a computer screen where someone had the endurance to do it for a couple hours at a time, it might need to build back up to that. And that's okay. Giving the space the first couple of days to review emails, to talk through things before going into the full swing of the job. And then okay, let's say 6 months in after someone returned from maternity leave, are you checking in with them saying, how was your experience? Do you feel supported, not just by having a pumping station? Do you feel like you're seen with the work you do? What seminars, now that you are a mother that work both inside the home and outside the home, what seminars would you like? There's for new parents, time management, talking with their spouses, financial planning as, a new parent. There's different seminars and well-being that can be done. Well-being is a big thing because parents, when they're clocked out of one job, they go to a different job at home. Is there a close gym? Is there something during the day that you're promoting physical wellness? There's so many things that can be done to support this new transition, and not just when they come back, just assume business as normal. It will get there, but it's supporting them back. And I would love to see it that you were doing the same thing for fathers as well. So these are the ways that companies should be seeing if they are welcoming and supportive to mothers and to parents in the company. Because I'm telling you, when you retain through example and through support, not just prior, but during and after the transition into motherhood and parenthood, and you lead by example, you retain valuable workers within your company, employees that can get promoted and can add diversity, can add tools they glean during parenthood, and you don't deter future applicants who are mothers to applying to your company, and you become an even more desired company to work for, which when you always have a larger applicant pool, that means you just increase your success and longevity, and you're doing a good thing. So with that, I leave you. Thank you so much for joining us. Share this, please,
with a person that would really benefit, but especially this episode with a company. If anyone's interested with listening audits and learning more, please message me, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day.